Welcome to our first webcast, I guess, for the PQP2 course of winter 2020. We'd like to just begin by acknowledging that we're filming today from the traditional territory of Fort William First Nation, or Jan.22, and happy to be a person who lives in this territory, a person who gets a chance to work with many people from the Anishinaabe territory. And so welcome.
So
Say who you are.
Oh, sorry. I guess we should introduce ourselves. I'm Christy Radborn, and I'm a principal with Lakehead District School Board. I saw many of you, if you got a chance to watch our video with Pam Agua from our Zoom session. I met many of you there and told you a little bit about myself. And I'm teaching WDF section, although you may certainly see Denise in there as well.
Yeah. And I'm Denise Baxter, member of Martin Falls First Nation, Bear Clan. You hear my dogs? Hey, stop. They're having their evening playtime. And I worked in public and private First Nation schools for 26 years, and I've spent the last 2 years working at Lakehead University as the Vice Provost of Aboriginal Initiatives.
Okay, so we want to get started tonight.
Boys, get on your bed.
So while we're talking, after reading through Module 1 and part of Module 2, we've really noticed some themes and some things we'd just really like to highlight and talk about a little bit from our experience, and maybe answer some questions and some of the posts we saw, and share some thoughts. So the first one is on courageous conversations, and we certainly noticed that there was a lot of discussion about how people felt about courageous conversations. There weren't too many.
I want to say who likes them.
Yeah, that said they love them. So we thought we'd talk about them. They are difficult. We will acknowledge that.
Yeah.
It's certainly not an easy thing. That's why they're called courageous. But they certainly are very necessary. And if you've ever been involved on either end of one, you may recognize that they've had something to really contribute. And some things to remember that'll help them go a little easier. So is perspectives. And that's learning to see through others' perspectives will help you when you present a conversation that's going to be challenging. If you know how the person's going to receive it, you've thought long and hard about how you're going to deliver your message because you know how they might perceive it, then that also eases the transition into that challenging piece. You want to be always in every conversation, you want to be clear, consistent, and well communicate. You want your expectations to be very well communicated. And that's not just in the conversation. Those expectations should be, people should come into your school and say, so what's expected of teachers here? What's expected of staff here? And they should be able to tell you the core things that are values and beliefs in your school and that they know that are going to have to be adhered to. So those are really clear and important. The other piece is that your process for your challenging conversation or courageous conversation should be explicit and it should be transparent.
So just add in here, one of the pieces in the back of the book is the ABCDE framework for thinking through difficult decisions.
In the EQ Edge book.
Oh yeah, so the EQ Edge book. And I found that has been a very nice way to lay your thinking before you go into that conversation. I think one of the big things that you want to be aware of is you want to, like I think any interaction, know what you need to say, what you anticipate all those outcomes being. Have like scenario A, B, C, and D in your head, and if this is said, then I know this is what I'm going to say, and kind of moving that along. It I think becomes it's helpful. You don't want to go in blind, and you don't want to go in unprepared.
I always use an outline, so I have like my first initial questions, because I'm always going to start from a questioning stance. I don't assume things. It's not a piece.
I always wrote down my welcome.
Yeah,
and my purpose, my learning goal
why
for
we're
that
here,
meeting.
right?
Yeah.
So, and if that process is always the same, it's explicit and it's transparent, meaning that everyone sort of knows how it's going to go, then if they have to come into a courageous conversation with you, then people know what to expect, and it automatically sort of takes some of the challenge and contentiousness out of it.
And I would say the people that you've told that you're going to have this conversation with, they probably didn't sleep the night before.
No.
They probably didn't, And I
still don't. I have them. I've had a few recently, and I spend days thinking about them, and I do spend sleepless nights too. So the during piece, remember that you need to maintain the relationship. Rarely are you walking into a situation where you're going to terminate somebody and you're not going to have a relationship with them anymore. They're going to be there. They're going to be on your staff. So the idea I always go into with it is I want to maintain that relationship while creating a critical reflection that's tied to some sort of action for the person. And when I keep that in mind, then I think of it as a stimulating conversation rather than quite so contentious or challenging. This is the time when you employ all those EI skills you've been talking about. So the three that really come to mind very quickly for me are active listening, assertiveness, and empathy. There's certainly others that you will need to bring into play, but those three, if you're working hard at those and they're sort of ready to go in a challenging conversation, they're going to help out.
I'm going to add a little bit in there. Be direct.
Yeah.
Early in my principal career, I was always trying to be nice and trying to set everything up so that I didn't hurt anyone's feelings. And I remember the union president sitting me down and saying, Denise, this was a different meeting, but she said, our last meeting, you spoke far too much. Just tell them what they need to know, tell them what your expectation is, and tell them what's going to happen if they don't adhere. Yeah. She said, it needs to be that straightforward and that simple, because if they could do what is expected, they would already be doing it. Yeah. So that was a good lesson for me.
Yeah, that is a good thing to remember. And to kind of further that, they folks who are in a challenging conversation, if they're on the other receiving end, they don't want to be there a long time. No. And the longer we have to be in and have to listen to it, most people just want to go, okay, thank you, yes, thank you, yes. Most people just want to get done. And so there's some benefits to that. So the benefits of having these conversations, even ones that aren't necessarily disciplinary, there's two kinds or three kinds, there's lots of different reasons you might be having them. But some of the unexpected ones is that, believe it or not, others in your building will likely feel supported and valued. And the reason is, if you've been very clear and explicit about your expectations and how they're linked to your vision and your values, if we're not ensuring everybody's adhering to that, even with support, then we're really not living to it. And so everybody else says, well, if I'm living it and I'm working it and I'm trying really hard to improve and I'm reflecting, but I could not, and nothing is followed up on it, then you lose that sort of impetus, that you lose that living the vision that Sinek talked about. And
I'm thinking of the restorative practices framework as well. They have a little graph. I can probably take a screenshot of it. But they have, they're talking about in parenting, but permissive parenting, which would be the administrator who just turns a blind eye. You devalue the hard work and the dedication of all the other people that are putting in all that effort and doing an exceptional job.
So that's something people don't think about as an unexpected benefit. Also, that it's expected and the process is valued. So people know that if I have a difficulty, this is how it's going to be handled. They know that you're not going to, quote, fly off the handle, which happens. People do that. And
we had quite a bit of dialogue in our chat pods about that.
And deal with it by, yelling or screaming, or all of a sudden it's a huge problem when we've had no discussion prior to it. So they really do value that process, and that's another benefit. And they'll start to recognize that. And then, continually to assert that the work of everything that you do relates to your vision and your purpose. The last thing is that you are ensuring public accountability through those courageous conversations, and that's obviously in our literature, our framework, our leadership framework.
So we're going to talk you quickly through the next 2 points, because we try to keep this to 10 minutes or less for you.
So let's lead to collaboration first.
I think that's probably
and I think we talked about it. Lots of people had great discussion about the monographs. A couple things. Collaboration really comes from efficacy. It also creates efficacy in your staff, meaning they're valued, that they have voice, and there's space made for them. Their voice is visible. It's seen in your SIP plans. It's in your visions. It's in your math strategy, etc.
I think the piece to that is recognizing that I always viewed, and I think even in the job titles, everyone is a professional in your building, and with being a professional, there are expectations about learning, about contributing, and your responsibility to making it a good learning space.
And a safe space for making mistakes and asking questions. And a great way to do that is the leader is a relational person, and there's some vulnerability. There's some other parts we can talk about in our next one, but the last one, because I want to touch on, because it's happening right now. Labor relations. So we're just going to keep key messages. Keep always at the forefront that after we will all work together. So that's really key and important. If you are working with the public and parents, your messaging, always supportive. It's non-argumentative. Don't get into the political debate. Don't engage. Always speak positively about your school, your board, the education system, because we want them all back after. We all want them to stay. Focus on the long term, and always acknowledge that it is difficult, because it is difficult, and acknowledge that if they are cooperating and they're patient, always acknowledge that, and people just appreciate that. I think that's a few key messages tonight.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's quick.
Yes, but we love the post, enjoying reading all of it. If you have any questions, please shoot us an email, a WhatsApp, a Twitter message.
Yeah.
And we look forward to learning with you.
And I think, just if I could do, and I think Christy's group is probably the same, but people are being very honest about their challenges, being very honest about, you know, their personal challenges with different things. And I think that from reading, and certainly myself, I really appreciate the honesty. Because by showing that vulnerability as a leader, you do put yourself in the space of being a learner. And quite often we refer to the principal as the lead learner. And if you're a know-it-all, well, then you're basically telling your staff that you have nothing to learn, and probably they don't either. So you don't create that learning environment together. So I appreciate people sharing some personal pieces.
And certainly let our discussion tonight, where people were feeling they had questions and still concerns, or didn't feel as strong in other suits. So.
Yeah, so Miigwech, thank you.
Thank you.
Happy Chinese New Year for those of you who are celebrating this week, and we'll see you again.
See you again.
Bye.